Hola everyone. I had to pick it back up for you guys so that we can complete the chapter of the Bible. So I'm going to pick up starting on page 47 of A Metaphysical Interpretation of the Bible by Stephen L. Harefield. And this is the third paragraph on page 47. The words of the Master, as reported in the Gospel of John, recognize that our ultimate destiny is to accomplish great things were we to develop our potentials to their fullest. In essence, it is a direct statement that allows us to act accordingly. Today, many religious organizations restrict spiritual endeavors by telling their congregants that going beyond their teachings is evil, blasphemous, thus implying they are not worthy. If they are indeed not worthy, would that not suggest that God made a mistake? How could this be possible? How could perfection create imperfection? The idea of being not worthy has been so inculcated in so many people for over 1,600 years that modern minds consider it natural. We are repeatedly told that we are sinners, and on that subject, Sri Ramakrishna tells us that if you repeat enough that you are a sinner, then you shall become one. How can all the various clerics have missed the depth of Christ's message over such a long period of time? In his own words, did he not give us permission to do as he did and even more? Today, the way we reach this spiritual power is still deeply buried. How can we learn the inner secrets when all the pertinent information has been changed or hidden from view? It is obvious that we have been fed only a portion of knowledge required to complete the journey toward Christ consciousness. We must seek the rest of the text if we are to find the higher principles. These very same principles were undoubtedly shifted, but they are still available to all of us. The keys to such blessed realm are within us, as often mentioned in the Bible, but they must be located, and this how-to is what has been removed. It has been removed by blinding us and possibly limiting us to the idea of an external God and external reality. The other texts that we have cited offer a more expansive inner view of creation and the concept of Yahweh, the creative principle. And they're actually spelling it YHWH. And so I'm just pronouncing it Yahweh, the creative principle. In all the texts wherein Jesus is quoted, it is easy to perceive that he was teaching the inner higher concept of physical and spiritual forms, working in union to the apostles, the disciples, and the multitudes that followed him. Each of these groups was presented the same subjects at different levels, depending on their depth of comprehension. He often emphasized this point by saying, "Let those with ears hear." The metaphysical aspects of the teachings were there, but whether they were related at the time or even in our present era, it was known that not all would be able to understand their profundity. The opportunity to absorb the great truths of life becomes further hindered by the fact that many of these teachings were either not included or were intentionally removed from the Bible. By the same token, how can we fully understand if we look for physical answers to our spiritual questions? Did the Master not tell us that the kingdom is within us? Why then are we looking outside of ourselves for the responses? Why must we must look within? We must look within our own personal divine mind and enter our own secret chamber, as the Christ so stated. We must let ourselves be guided by the ancient masters themselves, through the simple words of truth found in what we call the forgotten books of the Bible. When carefully studied, the great book itself does seek and contain the answers, and not the outer material justifications we are conditioned to believe. The shifting, omission, destruction, and manipulation of biblical texts can be traced back to the very first compilation of the writings during the reign of Emperor Constantine, whose desire was to control the world as they knew it then. As we mentioned earlier, in this chapter, his protective attitude toward the Christians did launch a religion that is still the strongest organization today. However, it appears that such a sweeping decision also fulfilled his desire to dominate the masses on a larger scale. This supplementary benefit works so well that it is still in place today. The control it exercises over its global congregation was not the original intention of the creative power of the universe. If it had been, we would not have the freedom of mind that we enjoy. The careful selective collecting of books under the supervision of Eusebius of Caesarea was steeped in the idea of power and control as previously explained. In his own way, Constantine was a visionary of sorts, who could visualize the scope of the then burgeoning idea of Christianity. He desired, and rightly so, to unify the different factions of early Christianity into one system of thought. Does his initial objective still apply today? Considering the extent of the complete project, it leaves us with the impression that the populace would have to depend on the church for accepted knowledge. Until, and even after, the printing of the Bible, no one was allowed to read and teach the text except those who had alleged understanding of its context. In her books, Isis Unveiled, H.P. Blavatsky tells us that today, all the teachings not included in the Bible are still within the enclave of the Vatican under Catholic control and will never be shared. One would surmise that if they were ever revealed, we would no longer need the church, at least in its present capacity. If those teachings were properly and evenly disseminated, would we not be able to become the divine mind of the original intention? Would we not attain Christ consciousness and be able to accomplish the works the Master mentioned in John 14:12? What world would it be? Because of the decisions made by the leaders of the early civilizations and the superstitious belief systems existing among the masses, we find ourselves today not walking the path of ancient masters. We do not live divinely. We live materially with ancient masters. We do not live divinely. We live materially with absolute reliance on the outer world. We have become worshippers of the idols. We live under the control of the flesh, following the path of the body, as slaves to life's lower vibrations and thought forms. In other words, everything outside of ourselves. Again, as Jesus said in Luke 6:39, can the blind lead the blind? Shall they not both fall into the ditch? In the forming of any civilization, the need to organize people is a primary function, or so it may seem. It has always been motivated mostly by the desire to control, while religion is the tool that can bring a single belief system under one rule. From a historical perspective, this has been accomplished. We cannot deny those facts as long as we follow the lower paths of life. Conversely, if we were to truly understand and accept the higher principles, the need for control would dissipate and the limits we place upon our inner self would be virtually non-existent. We would become free thinkers. That alone could truly bring us closer to the reality and intention of the creative principle. Ever since humankind caught on to the idea of control, we have believed that there must be someone appointed as a leader or whatever group or faction is being founded, on the assumption that we know not what we do. It is my perception that the divine principle was, is, and always will be in control for a collective higher purpose. As human beings with a physical nature, we get in the way because of this egotistic need to control and dominate others. Perhaps God really did make us in its likeness. In the continuing process of our evolution, it seems that this divine declaration of intent is still being unfolded. As infinite beings, we yet have to absorb the staggering impact of infinity as an experience and not just an item of intellect. Each of us has the possibility to discern that the power of infinity and the power of self in conjunction with God will and can create all things. The definitive answer is in the union and not the separation between body and soul that religious minds have inculcated in our minds. In Matthew 12:25, did Jesus himself not state that a house divided against itself shall not stand? That seems to be the case. We all have the opportunity to enjoy this ultimate encountering in the realm of a truly divine living thought form with conscious influence on the outer environment without the need in our misguided division to destroy our world. For some 1600 years, our present general belief system derived from the religious control applied through the compilation of what we know as the Bible may be the very thing that confines and binds us. The creative principles idea, let me make sure that one was clear. For some 1600 years, our present general belief system, derived from the religious control applied through the compilation of what we know as the Bible, may be the very thing that confines and binds us. The creative principles idea was one of forward movement into the arena of truth, and for 16 centuries, we effectively stood still, even though the good book continued to tell us that the kingdom is within us. What does it take to make each of us grasp this essence of verity? We must first break loose from the bonds of conditioning, fear, and controlled exercise over us from the very inception of the Bible, at least in the way it was and is being presented to the masses. We must realize the truth of our relationship and ourselves with the power known as God, which is within us and is us. It may be appropriate to offer you a glimpse of the policies and procedures that were and may still be used in the area of control and fear by reading a short book entitled Secret Instructions of the Society of Jesus. It was prepared for the Jesuit order of the Catholic Church and disseminated the world over. It is quite interesting in that it provides instructions in the various ways to earn money for the church. Here are a few excerpts taken directly from the manual and reproduced word for word. Chapter 2, page 11. The manner with which the fathers of the order must conduct themselves to acquire and preserve the familiarity of princes, magnates, and powerful and rich persons. Chapter 3, page 13. How the society must be conducted with the great authorities in the state, and in the case they are not rich, we must lend ourselves to others. In the same book, you can find these most significant and somewhat shocking quotes of the mode of attracting rich widows. Chapter 6, title. Chapter 7, system which must be employed with widows and methods of disposing of their property. These are indeed startling revelations in the way to conduct church business. It depicts a focus that has always been on the monetary value of individuals and not necessarily on their spiritual side, and certainly not their salvation. If you have no money, we will concentrate elsewhere. The above information may be surprising to most of us, but we must recognize that the majority of religious organizations are very wealthy, even by today's standards. The coffers have grown heavy from our donations, most of which are not all used for the poor and the needy. Much of the funds are used in construction of buildings and temples with all their external trappings. A portion is wisely invested in many enterprises, while not much is offered for the health of the spirit. As a matter of fact, Jesus himself strongly emphasized the need to separate ourselves from the hold the material world can have on us, usually at the detriment of our spiritual selves and our health. Several examples of his wise words can be found throughout Matthew 13. Are we not doing today the very same things the Pharisees did at the time of the Master? Are we still not pushing the people onto the wrong path, the path of external self? Are we still not attempting to control through ridicule, condescension, and the use of love as a weapon? We are accepted as long as we unquestioningly agree with what is being taught. The moment we begin to ask questions, doubting the current belief, we can sense the accusing epithet of non-believer. What is faith if we do not have enough of an inner creed to test it out? Paul himself stated in 2 Corinthians 5:7 that we should walk in faith and not with what the eyes see. Apparently, we still have not learned that Jesus said in Matthew 11:15, "He that has ears to hear, let him hear." The Master was telling us that not everyone would understand the teachings. It has become more difficult today than it was in his era because of the veils that have been put securely into place. It also explains the reason for the use of metaphors that are comparable to Zen koans, designed to create a deeper internal search. Each of us is indeed unique, and allegorical texts could be applied to all people because of their flexible aspect. However, their true meaning can only be reached on the inner plane and not the outer. Here lies the present stumbling block. Today we seek the answers to our profound spiritual quest through physical means, and more times than not, they cannot be obtained that way. Life may be the end result of these quests, but it is not the answer. Reality should tell us that in these cases, we must look within for the messages. Perhaps that would explain why so many have been overlooked. The parables used by Jesus are by far the best examples of this type of communication. Did the older prophecies not state that the Messiah would come and speak in parables? And he certainly fulfilled the prophecies of Isaiah and Daniel. In John 16:25, the Master said, "But I shall shew you plainly of the Father." And he went on to speak of God during his ministry in a strong, truthful, loving, and reverent fashion. This is my humble goal. Even though it may appear at times that my remarks are somewhat disparaging, you can be assured that they are not meant to be and are focused strictly on relating the truth. The legacy and the guidance left to us must be exposed as it was originally intended, so that each of us has an equal chance to find and follow the path to spirituality and consciousness. Everything written thus far is as accurate as history will allow, and is copiously documented through all the ancient texts, and the readers can locate the quotes for themselves. Most of us have allowed the clergy to explain to us the meanings of biblical texts, thus eliminating our freedom of choice to understand our own way as free thinkers should. This type of mental dominance may have been acceptable in the dark ages of our history. In the early days of Christianity, there were very few Bibles, generally owned by the clergy. Thus came the tradition of only priests offering the teachings, along with the varied interpretations. It is not as prevalent today. Rapid technological advances and individual self-determination in our modern world have made the masses realize that there are many ways to research the idea of God. We are beginning to recognize that there is no need for interpretation by any organization or anyone other than ourselves. When it comes to the very real existence of the inner God of peace and love, the teachings of the Bible and all ancient texts are there to guide us in discovering and knowing ourselves, providing we can decipher and apply the wonderful messages they contain. If we were to truly seek the idea of the creative principle, it would stand to reason that we should look in the proper direction. We should search in the writings that have withstood the test of time, the destructive whims and wars of humankind, from an empire that started with Constantine and ended with Napoleon. Those mystic messages have survived power, money, greed, conquest, defeat, and the many religious beliefs scattered across vast lands and kingdoms. Their true meanings are all well worth the effort. We have lost interest in the true meaning of the lessons outlined by the great masters. Have all the renditions and controls discouraged us from grasping the beneficial aspects presented by the wisdom and knowledge? The answers to these questions are beginning to come to light, and they are indeed positive. Have you not noticed that all is going on right now concerning Jesus and the Bible? The winds of change are affecting all parts of our globe, touching our present religious systems, pointing to a new direction of truth that can be reached individually or collectively. Perhaps it is the reason why I find it quite startling that so many people have never read the Bible. It is such a great, marvelous book on the theme of pure metaphysics, yet the simple truth within it can reach our soul if we know how to read the symbolism of the ancient Aramaic world. We can find it in the other lost books as well, where the words are great lessons on the subject of enlightenment and consciousness. The infinite wisdom found in the Bible and the lost books contains all the advice needed to live in the Christ consciousness with each other, bringing about a world of peace, love, and reverence as we return to the state of innocence we knew in the Garden of Eden. In the next chapter, we will begin a journey in the concept of creation and life through the book of Genesis, the very first book of the Old Testament. As mentioned earlier, we will then cover the book of Isaiah, the lost 18 years in the life of Jesus, the four main gospels of the book of Revelation, to learn that the Master himself was taught. To learn that the Master himself was taught. That the Master himself was taught is quite, I think that was a little typo in there, but is taught is quite a revelation. To learn that the Master himself was taught is quite a revelation. Oh, okay, now I get it. You get it? To learn that the Master himself was taught is quite a revelation. As he was taught, we can then follow his very path to attain the level that he did. It is up to each of us to find it. For those of you familiar with the contents of the Bible, it will be a new challenging experience that will bring new horizons to your quest for higher principles. The symbols woven into the parables will shed their physical, literal presentation and unveil material, mental, emotional, and spiritual implications through their metaphysical interpretation. We will explain how we may balance and unify all of them, removing the idea of duality and separation. We then conclude, we will conclude if such word can be used. With the awakening of the soul depicted in Revelation, this is the journey of the soul from one life to the next, from the beginning of time to our present era. We will travel the path that began eons ago, from the original birth to transitional lives, still being played out one after the other. They will be ever present moving forward, offering us the opportunity to rise to a higher form of God consciousness as our reality, and we will shine as though a city on the hill. The Bible is an extraordinary book that contains all we need for our spiritual growth. It makes us realize with a purpose that our process of life has been one of worshiping an external God and a material existence. Once we accept this truth, we can begin on the road to higher levels, removing the veils of illusion bought on by this kind of lifestyle. All it takes is a clear understanding of the wisdom contained in the Bible from a metaphysical point of view. And then that ends in page 55, and we're going to be starting in 57 on the next podcast. It'll be Genesis on page 57. But let me just say that in reading this, the things that continue to persist is the importance of your own story and finding your own truth, and really using this as a guide to help you confirm things that are within you, things that haven't been written, things that nobody knows about, that nobody has written about. You know, just because it's written in the book, that is not the only, this is a great guide, but there's more to us, and there's more in you, and it's up to every individual to be able to find that. I hope that you can join us as we continue through reading this book, A Metaphysical Interpretation of the Bible, in the Master Vibration 13 study group. When we get to Genesis, I'm going to be sharing this one as well. I was inspired to share the first part of this with everyone because it's just very powerful when you start to think about the things, especially as a woman growing up in, different facets of religion. It's always known the idea of the suppression of women and how it has been so blatant. But your soul knows. And when you have that connection with the Most High, clues are always left, and they're left inside of you for you to discover them, and this it's a huge realization of the power of the divine feminine and the unification of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And that's what we're here to do now in this time, to bring back that space when we are living in this consciousness of love and peace. It's absolutely possible. And it's happening. It's happening right now. It's like I keep thinking about, I had this book in 2017. Why didn't I think about doing this then? Well, it just wasn't time. And it just shows, how divine things are. And it was absolutely nothing planned at all. In fact, I still haven't looked. I have to make sure that, what I'm doing is not against any of the, anything against. I'm not trying to hurt Mr. Harefield. I'm not trying to, I just want to share this information with other people that I know that should know about it. And it is on a private site. I'm not sharing this with absolutely everyone. Just, my little tiny network. And so I'm definitely going to continue to look and see and make sure that I'm doing everything as I should. But in the meantime, get your metaphysical interpretations of the Bible. You can get the PDF on the site. You can also get the PDF at, I believe it's the metaphysical interpretation of the Bible. I think that they have a website as well. But we have someone that wants to share theirs here on the site. So you can check her out. And with that, I will check you guys out on Genesis on the next one. Adios.